Angelo Santabarbara. Angelo, quite a day yesterday. Despite the resignation, though, do you expect impeachment to go forward?
Well, I think what the resignation does is it allows our state to move forward. We need a governor that can have a collaborative relationship with the state legislature. Clearly, Governor Cuomo is not that person. We have a lot of work to do, a lot of challenges ahead. But given that this resignation, what it doesn't give us is accountability. The Judiciary Committee, the impeachment investigation that the Assembly is conducting needs to be completed because the AG's report is certainly a start, but it only looks at the sexual harassment charges. But when you look at what the Assembly's Judiciary Committee is looking at, it's much more than that. They're focusing on the delays in releasing the nursing home data, the use of government resources for his book deal, the improper use of COVID testing for family and friends in his inner circle, and the list goes on and on. There were threats against my colleague Ron Kim and other members of the legislature. So there's a lot more work that is going into the Judiciary Committee's investigation. I think they were charged to complete that report, to complete that investigation. They should do that. They should present their findings to the state assembly, to the entire body, and we will draw our conclusions from that to what the next step should be. And impeachment should absolutely be on the table. We should not remove that option. That has to be one of the options when we receive that report and get the information. Okay, so as we move forward here, what does the future look like under the lieutenant governor in New York? Well, I'm from upstate New York. I'm from a small town, Rotterdam, New York, and she's the first upstate governor in more than 100 years. I have hope that the future will be much better for the executive chamber. So I think that as I said, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of challenges ahead. We do have to work on reforming the executive chamber. There is a lot to look at. One of the bills that I have is to look at officials that are impeached and in regards to pensions, walking away with a pension even after impeachment. But there is much more to be reformed in the governor's office itself. So I think there's an opportunity to do that. So we need to look at that. And I think working together, we need a collaborative relationship. There was clearly a persistent pattern of abuse and in the governor's office, and that's what made his service no longer tenable. It was, in fact, a distraction from the important business of government. But what we need is some reform now. We need to look at that, and we need to work together to make that happen. And I'm hopeful that we can do that with the incoming governor, Kathy Hochul.
Along those lines, there is a cloud, one of many clouds hanging over this governor. And it's the fact that while you and your fellow colleagues on both sides of the aisle knew what you were up against in Cuomo, knew what kind of guy he was, it's not like the media shared that sentiment. They were a little bit confused, maybe a little bit fangirling over the governor. Take a look. Do we have that? Okay, I do not believe we have that soundbite. But basically, the gist of it is, Assemblyman, they loved him from the get-go, and they propped him up at almost every stage of the game until the last couple of weeks. How tiresome was it for you to hear that praise when you knew exactly what was happening up there in Albany?
Well, what we've seen is this governor has slowly accumulated more and more power, consolidated power into the governor's office. He didn't want oversight. He didn't want people disagreeing with him. It was a toxic environment within the chamber, as we saw, but it was also an abusive relationship with the legislature. He many times just wanted to push the legislature aside, and over time he accumulated more and more power. And when we tried to exert oversight, he just simply ignored us. We saw that with the nursing home data that was delayed, that he made a number of excuses. He didn't want to give us the information. We had hearings, but that oversight was just ignored. And so there is a lot of room for reform here because we experienced that. Ron Kim was not the only assembly member that was threatened. There are a number of others that were even afraid to speak out. But what we saw with the AG's report, what's happened over the past several days, we saw an exodus of his of his top aides, including just a few days ago, Melissa DeRosa, which was really a signal that the end was near. This governor was facing imminent impeachment.
Right.
That was just a few weeks away here. He knew he didn't have the votes in the Assembly or the Senate, and this had to be the only option, or I believe he wouldn't have done it. We were all kind of surprised that he did, in fact, resign yesterday, but we weren't expecting it because he had been so defiant. He had tried to interfere with the ongoing investigations. He had continued to try and manipulate and control everybody around him, including members of his own staff. So there was a number of things going on. This had to be the only option. But again, this resignation allows us to move forward, but it does not give us accountability. So we need to move forward with this impeachment inquiry.
My next question to you is going to be if you were surprised by the timing of this, but you answered that already. Assemblyman Angelo Santabarbara, thank you very much for getting up early this morning and joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.